This is 3.4 review, number 4. It says modeling real life. A radio station collects donations for a new broadcast tower. The cost of construction is $25.50 per inch. 4A says represent the ratio relationship using the graph. Well, what I notice is that if I look in the problem, it actually only gives me one coordinate pair. It only gives me one set of coordinates because it says the cost of construction is $25.50 per inch. If you take a look to the right, I created a table over here with donations in money and then height funded in inches. Notice that I labeled it X and Y. I did that because when I looked down here at the graph, the donations is along the x-axis. So since the donations is along the x-axis, I have to keep it. I have to keep those numbers, the donation numbers, the dollars, represented by X. And then the same thing over here, the height funded is along the y-axis, so I have to keep all of those under the y column. It says $25.50 per inch, so I know that the 1 inch goes over here. And then the $25.50 goes over here. Sorry for my writing. So I'm going to go ahead and graph that. And I said, okay, to over $25.50, or here it's labeled as 25 5/10, but that's the same thing. And then up 1. Notice I actually went up 2 hash marks, but that's because it looks like the y-axis is going by halves. So notice it didn't make a line for me, and that's because in order to make a line, we have to have 2 coordinate pairs. So we need to find one more. There's different ways to do this, but what I would do is I would say, okay, over here, if I have 2 inches, what would the donations be? Well, I'm doubling it, right? I'm going from 1 to 2. I'm timesing it by 2. And so I'm going to times $25.50 by 2, and I actually just need to do mental math here. I know 25 times 2 is 50. And 50 cents times 2, if I had 2 quarters and I add 2 more quarters, I have $1. So that's going to be 50 plus 1, which is 51. So I'm going to go graph that. I'm going to go over 51, up 2. And you can see it created a straight line for me through 0, 0. So you'll be good on 4A if you follow those steps. And for 4B, it says, how much does it cost to fund 4.5 inches of the construction? Well, I'm going to use the graph I just created to help me with this. So 4.5 inches of construction. Let's go up and take a look. So if I go up to 4.5, I know it's right here between 4 and 5. I'm going to follow that line all the way over until I hit the line we just created. So I hit right here. And it looks like I hit between 102 and 127.5 or 127 and 5/10. Well, I know from this graph that every time we add a new number, so you can see we went over 2 spaces, it was 25.5. We went over 2 spaces, it was 51. We went over 2 spaces, it was 76.5. Went over 2 spaces, it was 102. Went over 2 spaces is 127.5. So what I know is that the difference between 102 and 127.5 is 25 and 5/10. So the difference between 102 and 127.5 is 25 and 5/10. Well, I want to see what I need to do to get from 102 to that line right here, right in between. Well, it's going to be half of 25 and 5/10. So if I go back here and there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is the way I want to the way I want to use to refresh on long division. So I have 2 goes into 2 once it equals 2 goes into 2 once, it equals 2. I subtract and bring down. 2 goes into 5 twice, it equals 2, it equals 4. I subtract. My decimal goes straight up since there's no decimal in the divisor. And when I bring down, I'm left with 15. So 2 goes into 15 7 times. And sorry, I'm not sure what this is doing here. And it equals 14. And that leaves us with 1. Well, the problem is we can't have a remainder when we're working with decimals. So what we do remember is we add a 0 because 25 and 5/10 is the same as 25 and 50 hundredths. And we bring that 0 down. And 2 goes into 10 5 times. So what we know is each of these hashes, like if I go from 0 to right here, it goes up 12 and 75 hundredths, and then it goes up 12 and 75 hundredths, 12 and 75 hundredths. So to get from 102 to this next hash, right in between 102 and 127 and a half, would be adding 102 plus 12 and 75 hundredths. So we're using some skills that we've worked on over the past month or so. And when I add those together, I'm going to end up with 114 and 75 hundredths. So down here, this is going to be 114 and 75 hundredths.